just looking at the speed of supposed space debris.
Oh, Leo, I think you should stick with toenail fungus. So having spent a hard day sat in a little box in a crane, Leo decides to come home and lecture everyone about the dangers of orbital debris.
Space debris may not sound dangerous until one...
Oi, we haven't started yet. Quick thanks to all my amazing patrons. I want to give massive thanks to all of my supporting members and patrons. Thank you all so very much. Well, Leo, I don't really hold out much hope of you actually debunking anything, but let's give it a go.
Space debris may not sound dangerous until one realises that in low Earth orbit, up to about 1,200 miles in altitude, such debris collides with an average speed of about 22,370 miles an hour, according to NASA. Wow!
Yeah, we know, Leo. A big, scary number.
Let's get some idea with this illustration of the space debris problem, which essentially goes from 57 up to 2015. Of course, it'll be a lot worse now, but you get the point. So let's have a look.
Do you think it will help? I mean, do you think you'll understand what you're looking at?
Starts to get very messy by the 70s.
Yeah, flares, Barrymore collars and platform shoes.
The 80s is just daft.
Yeah, new romantic, frills, heavy makeup. Oi, that's me.
The 90s is ridiculous.
Game Boys, Spice Girls, acid wash jeans.
I mean, from the noughties onwards, just...
An amazing future with the internet opening up a world of possibilities.
I mean, look at the state of that.
Yeah, flat earth idiots who have worked out that you can't polish turds, but that you can roll them in glitter.
So it's very strange that if that was true, and bizarre by the fact that when NASA, SpaceX, all these agencies have their launch, they never ever take into account space debris.
Well, why am I surprised? A fail already, Leo. This document's from the ESA Space Debris Office. During the ascent phase, some verifications are completed in order to assess the probability of having a foreign body in the vicinity of the launch trajectory, with potential limitation of the launch window if the risk of collision is considered too high. So yes, they do take it into account. And what's more, they also ensure that things like booster rockets and so on aren't left in the low Earth orbit height or in the geostationary orbit height. So they try to mitigate future risks. So yeah, a big fail already, Leo.
Bizarre.
But not surprising.
I think you'd want to know where items travelling at 22,000 mile an hour, or that can hit you, at 22,000 mile an hour, are travelling. But strangely enough, they're only interested in the weather.
Yet another big fail for you, Leo, because I think NASA's Orbital Debris Program Office would disagree with you. They're worried about more than the weather. They're tracking, modelling and trying to mitigate against this growing problem.
Very strange. It's as if the rocket goes off, out of sight and lands. They just need to know the weather to make sure the rocket can get to where it needs to get to safely, out of sight. They obviously, clearly, bizarrely, don't care about the space debris problem with items hurtling round the ball, supposedly. I wonder why.
I must admit, you may have raised a valid point. I mean, do they ever consider the chances of the ISS hitting tall cranes?
Could it be that it's not true and the globe's not true?
I'm going for no.
It would be impossible, I think, this day and age, to launch rockets into that mess. And then you supposedly got the ISS flying around that mess at 17,500 mile an hour. Clearly ridiculous.
Well, it all sounds very dangerous, Level, my old chum. So I thought we'd better have a look at a bit of maths. Now the diameter of the Earth is 3,958.8 miles. Let's just round that down to 3,950, okay? Of course, the ISS is not quite at surface level. So let's see the height of that. 254 miles. So we add the two together, it gives us about 4,200 miles. So what we want to do is work out the area of the sphere with that sort of radius. You work that out with 4 pi r squared. So we put in our diameter plus height of ISS, 4,200 miles. That gives us a surface area of 2.22 times 10 to the power of 8 square miles. That's quite a lot. So how many objects attract? Well, I did a bit of a Google. It's a few years out of date, but it'll do for a rough guideline. About 21,000. Which means that you have approximately one object every 10,571 square miles. But there are other objects, not just the tracked ones. Let's have a look at that. So they think there's about 29,000 objects larger than 10 centimetres, 670,000 larger than 1 centimetre, and more than 170 million greater than 1 millimetre. But which ones do we have to worry about? Well, a 10 centimetre object would basically blow up a typical satellite. A 1 centimetre object would disable a spacecraft and could penetrate the ISS. That does not mean it destroys it. And a 1 millimetre object could destroy subsystems, basically if it hits them. Okay, so we've got some figures. Well, let's go for 29,000 first. So 29,000 objects over our sphere is one every 7,655 square miles. Still not much chance of getting hit by one of those, is there? Okay, let's go for the next size. 670,000, and they can cause damage. Okay, that sounds a fairer test, doesn't it? 670,000. That still gives us one every 331 square miles. That's not much, really. If someone said that you had the chance of being hit by an object of that size that's going to land somewhere in 331 square miles around you, I don't think you'd be that worried, would you? Let's go for the big figure then. So 170 million. It says more than. Tell you what, let's go for 200 million. That's still 1.11 square miles. If I said that a 1 millimetre large object was going to suddenly appear somewhere in the square mile that you're in, are you that worried about it appearing within your body? No, because the odds are it's going to be nowhere near you. So all of that is assuming that the objects are scattered evenly across the surface of that entire sphere. So instead, let's assume that they're all at exactly the same height as the ISS, but just in a strip, only 100 miles wide. So we've got the radius of the Earth plus the height of the ISS, which gives us a circumference of that circle of 26,389 miles. We times it by 100 to get it in square miles at a 100 mile width. That's 2,638,900 square miles. So plug that into our calculator of 200 million objects, and that gives us one every 0.01 square miles. Now that does sound more dangerous, doesn't it?
They've even got the cheek to show us images like this from Chris Hadfield, supposedly. When he was on the ISS, ducking and diving through that lot. This hole supposedly appeared on the ISS.
And that was probably caused by something that's only a couple of millimetres across. And that does not happen
every day.
Story: when your spaceship suddenly starts leaking air, you fix your hole with duct tape and a gob of epoxy. Nice save. Woo!
Your car tyre is about 30, 32 psi. A bicycle tyre nearer 50. The atmospheric pressure on the space station is 14.7. It's not that difficult to hold it in. So Leo, your fail just keeps on coming, doesn't it? These images, in this case showing catalogued objects greater than 10 centimetres in diameter, are not to scale. If you had the Earth at that size, do you think you'd be able to see the dots of 10 centimetre objects? No. Those dots are probably the size of cities. So it's not like you're fighting through that white mass being the equivalent of shoppers on Oxford Street at Christmas. That's just a representative diagram showing the rough distribution of these objects. What you've got to remember is these objects are all travelling in different directions, at different heights, in different orbital planes. They're not all going round in a nice flat strip at the same height as the ISS within 100 miles. The danger is nowhere near what you seem to think it is. You also seem to be unaware of the fact that they can move the ISS. If they're tracking an object greater than the size of about a grapefruit and it's predicted it's going to come somewhere close to the ISS, what do? They boost its orbit, they lift it higher to reduce the chance of collision. And if there's a period where an object is predicted to come nearby, what do the astronauts do? They go into the capsules, ready to bail out if needed.
We got silly stories like that which just make no sense whatsoever when you consider our friend here, the U-2 pilot, has to wear his spacesuit, and if he had a hole in his plane like that and his spacesuit didn't have his spacesuit on, his blood would boil.
Well, not instantly. You've got to wait for the air to leak out and the pressure to drop, and you'd probably go unconscious before that happened. But then how many cubic metres of atmosphere are there in his cockpit? In the ISS, there's around 1,000 cubic metres.
But when you get a hole like this on the ISS, some epoxy, don't worry about it, and a bit of duct tape, and we'll juggle some tomatoes as well.
Here, Chris, you couldn't chuck one of those down on Leo's head, could you?
Can you see how daft order this is?
Yeah, I can. So I'm always puzzled about why you keep posting it.
But if you're in a spacecraft, bizarrely enough, and you get a hole in your spacecraft, juggle some tomatoes, kick back, and eventually repair it with some epoxy and a bit of duct tape. Sweet as a nut.
I must contact Mr. Hadfield to see if he's got some epoxy and duct tape left, because we could use it to plug that hole in your face. And lo and behold, what happened just after I recorded this video? Dragon capsule nearly struck with a piece of space debris. Let's have a look at that in slow motion. That stuff is up there. That stuff is dangerous. But they do what they can to avoid it. You are the most doubting Thomas of all Thomases that are doubtful. Level Earth Observer, once again, you have totally failed. Until next time, stay sensible.
Shut up and sit down.